Welcome back. This is the Artificial Intelligence Show. This is your co-host, Ola Semenikai, and I'm with
Your residential artist, Henrietta Wright.
y'all. How we're feeling today? I hope everybody doing good. We got a great episode today. This show is about Color My World. So we're asking ourselves, what does it mean to be original when machines can imitate imagination? So why is that important? Because we're thinking about today how we're going to highlight Rice's philosophy and her legacy of art, and especially in her legacy in education. We also want to contrast between originality with AI generated contents and creative field. Remember, we are art official, and we're looking at how we are comparing ourselves with artificial intelligence, especially in today's current modern world. We also want to discuss the educator role in presenting and evolving artistic identity. And then we're going to finish up by inspiring listeners to reflect on authentic expression in a data-driven world. All right, so right now we're going to talk about the impact on student creativity through art integration and just talk about what is art and how somebody who has already been doing this for a minute can tell you what she's on.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what is art? And I guess it's based on the mind of who you ask what art is. I'm a visual artist, and what I do is create. Where I create is a studio, and what I finally produce is a masterpiece. Remember I do a play on words. So when we think about art, original art, that can come from basically any medium the person wants to work with, whether it's drawing, painting, sculpting. I consider myself a multi-medium artist because I work in several different art mediums. I, of course, have my favorite and, those that can be mixed and matched. But one of the things we often think about is when someone wants your art. So you create this piece of art, from whatever recesses in your body, you decide to do that piece of art. Someone wants that, right? So we call those, if it's not an original piece, it's a print or a reprint of that. And most artists will know or hear about Giclée prints and so on and so forth. And so on the last podcast, I mentioned something about a reproduction. And as I said the last time, it's a play on words. So I changed the TION in reproduction to SHUN, shun. And I had said a reproduction can only be printed on the mind of an original thought. So what I create is that original piece, and it will always be that original piece because even me as an artist trying to reproduce that piece of art, it will never be exactly the same as that. Off by a stroke, off by color, so on and so forth. And so when you think about that in the world of AI, authenticity, digital reprints, and so on and so forth. What does that mean? What does that look like? How can we tell if something is original or if it's a reproduction? How does that hurt the artist who is trying to create this artwork? And then you've got someone that goes out there and does something that looks very similar or is in a digital format that may be somewhat more appealing to a particular audience when it comes to that. So that's a very scary thing when we think about art. So as an artist, like I said before, when NFTs came out, that was a real thing for me because I'm like, well, who's going to want my art if there's all this unoriginal art that can be mass produced, to the masses? But I like to think that maybe there are enough people out there in the world that want that original and will pay for something that is done from the artist themselves. And it's just something nice to be able to say, I have something original because I like to consider my pieces one of a kind. And I think every artist who does original art will have what we consider a one of a kind. And so all you can do is either get that done in a reprint or a series.
I kind of like that because it, like you said, your art is one of a kind.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be duplicated. It can't be imitated. But it's very interesting. A lot of people have transitioned and said AI is now create art better than human generated. And so now you see, like you're saying, like these NFTs and this so many ways that AI has generated our perception of art. And I think it's kind of scary because a lot of people, especially the younger generation, are not be able to distinguish just that missing pieces, the patterns of what you see the original artist is trying to do compared to what AI is just generating like different algorithms and then putting together. So now we're trying to understand, how do we now combat that? How do we contrast the originality of humans compared to this AI generated content?
Yeah, that's a very scary thing because when we think about us artists, we think about copyright issues.
Mhm.
And it's like literally anyone can take your work and just add some little aspect to it and then say that's now their original piece. And so who gets ownership of that? I mean, literally, we have the ownership because it is our piece, it is our copyright, but is it really? So that's another thing that we have to do, right? Copyright issues, when it comes to that. So I don't know. I think it's just so unfair that someone can just take something that I have and then just either just add something to it, maybe color something, and then say, hey, this is my piece. It's now, and not give me the credit for something that I did.
And it's your artifact. It's something that you are showing that this is my contribution into my field of people who really want to see my originality.
Yeah.
So now we ask ourselves, who owns this originality? What dialogues on this authorship in AI are we supposed to go? Like, what direction? 'Cause a lot of people are like, well, AI can create the same art, so why should the artist be upset? And I think people really don't understand that there's a day that you should like look back and just be transparent. And that's what we're piggyback from the last podcast. When you think about the language of AI creating this compared to the language of artists who have really emphasized themselves into this field, we see there's a shift where people are not being appreciative of like what original artists have done with their work.
And when AI does that, do we really call that creativity?
Do we even call it an output? And I think that's why it's so important with your art, because that's your creative expression. This is your footprint into the world. So I like how AI does give digital footprints, but now what does that do to us humans with our digital footprint? Do we even have any way that we can even see what would be like in the next 5 years, 10 years? Are we even going to be consider anything? So then I guess it comes to the next section. Machines imitate, but artists create. And it's very important because we think about creation. You can think about back in the time. You can even think about now. Will AI be able to create babies the same way humans create? So that's kind of where we at. We have shift from generative AI. Now we're looking at predictive AI, and now we even have agent AIs where AI can be a teacher. It can imitate yourself as a developer in coding, and it just do so much now.
Now I can be an artist
It
too.
can be art without the physical form,
Right.
which I guess that'll be a robot once they get to that point. And then, so I'm really trying to encourage our audience to understand that it's already here. It's faster than even you or me could have predicted. And we are like 5 years ahead because we want to see what's going on with the research. But AI has really shown us that the faster we move into the research, the more that people have missed the mark of why we created AI. We created it to support us, but not to imitate us. So we're now trying to see, how do we now look at output versus AI content. And it's really difficult because I think for us, as you were saying with your art, there are patterns that blend into abstract paint strokes. Holding a paintbrush, AI can't do that. So it just makes algorithms of this art, and it's overlaying those to suggest, what the art could be. But there's always those marks that a human self that's teaching is like, oh, I didn't know that this artist can create this certain paint and then continue with that. And that's something you can never take from the artist. So even though the machine is always imitating that, there's always that missing piece that it can never take. But I feel like for us, we are now disrespecting the fact that why humans have able to continue to progress with themselves is it's our own artifacts. It's our own narrators. You could tell a Van Gogh compared to other artists. And we're trying to make sure that we don't lose you as a Van Gogh in this area.
Yeah. And piggybacking on the title of this podcast, which is Color My World, and I shared my poem, and I was sharing you that I see my world in color, but I move in shades of gray. And any artist, as we talk about colors, those are like most people are familiar with the rainbow. When we think of the color gray, gray is a mixture of white and black, which are what we call shades and tints because they're not considered colors. And so when you look at the world where some people may be looking in as black and white, when you blend those colors together, it's like this gray area. So while I may see my world as colorful, is I'm really operating from this black and white spectrum that blends into this gray area. And this gray area for me now is all of this AI, all of this technology and digital art and so on and so forth and things that we're dealing with, today.
It's a lot to soak in. So I guess when we come back, we'll just talk more about really how do we color outside this code that we call AI? Let get more personal take on originality. And you are tuning in to Artificial Intelligence. Bye for now.
And that's fish.